Today we're going to talk about backpacking stoves. Probably the biggest decision that a buyer, potential buyer, has to make in selecting a backpacking stove is to decide which type of fuel they're interested in using. Second issue that we look at is the versatility of the stove. Versatility is simply, in my mind, when you can use it and what you can burn in it and what you can use it for. Canister fuel stoves and liquid fuel stoves alike run based on pressure. You have a pre-pressurized canister with a canister fuel stove. This comes from the factory at about 60 pounds per square inch. So it's a very high pressure system. But temperature and volume of fuel, so as this becomes empty, are going to affect the performance of the product. So as it gets colder, the temperature, or as the temperature lowers and it gets colder, the pressure is going to drop. And as the actual volume of fuel in the canister lowers, the pressure is also going to drop, which is going to affect the performance of the stove. Volume and temperature also affect canister or liquid fuel stoves, but in the case of a liquid fuel stove, they come with a pump, so you can actually change the pressure. Doesn't matter how cold it is outside, doesn't matter how much fuel you have in this canister, just pump it a little bit more to increase the pressure and get that stable driving force, and you're going to be able to see that stove operate at a consistent level throughout many, many different weather conditions. Another part of versatility is fuel availability and fuel types that you can use. With a canister fuel stove, you're pretty much in need of this type of a canister from a number of different vendors. Got to make sure the thread count is the same so that the stove accurately and precisely screws on so that there's no leakage of fuel. You need to make sure that the fuel that you're getting will work with the stove that you have. But basically, once you do that, you can only burn this type of fuel. Whereas with a liquid fuel stove, this canister is empty and refillable. So if you're traveling in the United States somewhere and you happen to be able to come across an extra gallon of white gas, you can go ahead and fill it and just start your stove right up again. A lot of the different liquid fuel stove types, like the Whisperlite International, the Dragonfly, which is over here, the XGK, these will all burn multiple fuels. So you can come across kerosene or diesel fuels. You can actually use those in this stove without any performance degradation. And that's a nice feature and benefit to have if you are traveling to those parts of the world. So the versatility is a big thing that we want to consider. Efficiency is the next thing we want to consider. Efficiency is really how much fuel are you going to use to boil water or to do the cooking that you're doing. So when we look at efficiency, we can look at canister fuel stoves first and recognize that while they're very easy to light, most of them, two of the three that I have here, are top mount canister fuel stoves. So what that means is that they sit on top of the fuel canister. And as a result, if I were to put a pot on top of this stove, the actual burner assembly would still be exposed to the wind and to the weather. And the downside of that is even a 5-mile-per-hour breeze moving very calmly across the top of that burner head is going to carry heat away with it. And as it carries that heat away, it is not being used to boil your water or cook your food. That's a very inefficient use of heat. And it affects canister fuel stoves significantly more than your typical liquid fuel stove. Because as you can see, the liquid fuel stoves we have are all using a detached fuel bottle. The burner is over here, the fuel bottle is over here. And what that enables us to do is bring into play two accessories that really aid significantly in the efficiency of this stove. First, there's something called a heat reflector, and that's going to go on the bottom, and it's basically a lightweight foldable piece of foil that's going to go underneath of the stove. And then because the canister is remote and separated, we can go ahead and put a windscreen around the stove. So now I could very easily place a pot on this stove, have no wind moving across the burner head, and therefore very little heat will be lost to the surrounding environment. All of it is going to be jammed right into whatever I'm cooking, making the fuel consumption, the boil times, so on and so forth, be a little bit more efficient. You can't use a windscreen and a heat reflector with a canister fuel stove. If I were to put this around that and put a top pot on top of this, I'd be trapping the heat around the canister, which could very quickly and easily cause this to explode. So absolutely under no circumstances do you want to put a windscreen around a top mount canister fuel stove. And in the end, what that means is these tend to run much less efficiently than a detached burner in a liquid fuel. In summary, we have liquid fuels and canister fuels that are available for backpacking stoves. Canister fuels tend to be less expensive and much easier to use than do their liquid fuel counterparts. However, they don't function well in varieties of weather conditions or when the fuel canister is empty, and they don't give you the ability to use multiple fuels. They also are less efficient because they don't, in most cases, when they're top mounted, when they're screwed to the top of the canister, they don't allow for use of a windscreen or heat reflector to make a more efficient system. Conversely, your liquid fuel stoves are a little more expensive to start up. They're also a little bit more difficult to use in that they require priming and periodic maintenance. However, in all weather conditions, they're going to be stabilized, their performance is going to be very, very similar, and they're going to allow for multiple types of fuel usage in many cases.